one of those nights where I can't sleep. Like, no matter what I do, it's just not gonna happen. So, I don't know. I'm gonna pop some popcorn. I don't know. Watch some video, play a game or something while everybody's sleeping. Because it's something that refocuses the mind. And I don't have the mental fortitude to focus on editing or writing right now. And I don't really want to make a mess. I guess our, microwave is being weird. It, like, burnt a portion of it, the rest of it was fine. And it was still below time for popcorn, so I'm gonna try again. Because that was weird. Happens from time to time, like taco pizza. We talk about this from time to time. It's like sort of a running joke / serious joke that I shouldn't cook while I'm upset about something. Specifically angry. And that if something happens that makes me mad, I burn shit. Or weird shit happens. I hate that's the only drawback to that stuff. The kernels. Yeah. So, anyway. I don't need every single kernel in there to be popped. Yep. Oh, yeah, the taco pizza incident was one where I was really mad, and why is this still happening? Yeah, it's the microwave at this point. At least this time it's not as bad. It's like focusing on one spot. Oh no. Swear to God, I'm the only one who cleans this out, but Gene didn't really have coffee today, so can't really blame him, I guess. Lucky you are some kind of brat. Stay down. Yeah, I'm not making coffee right now. I could probably make some chamomile tea. Even if it doesn't really have the desired effect of... What is my lemon and mint tea doing down here? Keep stuff in bags whenever they're not sealed. So that basically if bugs get in, they can't get into the tea. Just make freaking hot. Goddess knows I'm not gonna want to worry about it. Let's see, this will make about 2 cups. These are kind of skimpy though. To add green tea or not? No, probably not, because it has caffeine in it. Third one won't hurt. Maybe if it was steeping, I could get away with 1.5. But it's not. Usually I do these on a cup by cup, so... So I wrote in my journal that I don't really want to expand my circle of people and stuff. And I guess that's not really how I should have put it. And I keep on telling myself I should go back and fix it or put an edit at the end to explain it and blah blah blah. And I'm just like, I'm kind of tired of explaining myself over and over again. Like, how to fear some asshole will misunderstand. Or feel like they should be able to make it my problem. It's more like I don't want to expand my circle for the sake of expanding it. It's not a good reason anyway. What luckies. What luckies. I prefer the people around me to be people who won't stab me in the back. I don't like a bunch of people in my circle who can't be trusted, or who I have to pretend to be something I'm not around. So my circle's actually small, and that's the way I like it. My inner circle is probably only like a handful of people. That's kind of just how I am. I mean, I guess that's not really my inner circle. That's just my circle. There is no outer circle with me. I have acquaintances galore, and then I have friends. I don't have friends and true friends. I have people who call themselves my friends, and people who are my friends. I have the people who call themselves my friends and then turn tail at the first sign of anything. And then I have people who are my friends, who will stick by me through thick and thin and can take my honesty and dish it right back, and in the same token will attempt to be as nice as I attempt to be about it. Because, you really just don't want to, be mean to somebody. There are gentler ways to put it. Sometimes you can't, though. Sometimes you have to just lay it out there. And that's okay, too. But, there's a difference between just being honest with somebody and saying, hey, fuck you, motherfucker. There's a difference between that and you're being a jerk. You are being a ginormous asshole. You are acting like you are king shit. But then, hey, constructive, okay? How are you acting like king shit? Here's the instance, here it is, blah, 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 and here's how you're acting, here's how it makes other people feel. And then you take it or you leave it, and your friends just sort of accept you as the person that you are. Yeah. I guess you could say I have acquaintances and then I have family. Because your friends are the family that you choose, and I don't really do things halfway. And I don't like people around me who do things halfway. It's like, why would you? So, there are things I'll take a really long time to do, but it's because I'm making sure that it's done right, and that I have all the right materials and all that. Sorry, I'm thinking about something specific while I'm saying that. I've said it before. There are things that I have to do, right away, and things that, if I can help it, I'll, just be really careful and meticulous about it. I've said it before, it takes some kind of patience to live with a patient person. And I appreciate the amount of patience that it takes, because it literally took us about 4 years to settle on a last name, because Gene isn't really connected with, he doesn't exactly, we're not exactly sure what the spelling of his last name was, we just know that it was Starr, and that his age might have been fudged when he was adopted, which isn't uncommon. Carl's was fudged by 4 years. Yeah, so whenever they kicked him out, whenever he was supposedly 16, he was actually 12. Which would actually apparently explained a lot to the people who'd known him back then that still knew him whenever he found that out. There weren't very many people, I guess, but the one that I knew, he actually said that explains a lot, because he was small, skinny, and he didn't know shit. He didn't act like he was 16. He acted like he was 12. So, apparently he was actually 12. Anyway, they adopted him out as 4 years younger than he was. And then he went through the system being labeled as slow, behind, developmentally delayed. Turns out he really was just he wasn't really delayed in anything but that he was younger. Shit gets ridiculous. So with Gene, it wouldn't surprise us. It's not unusual for them to do that. For them to change the ages of the kids whenever they adopt them out. I'm not saying it always happens, but I'm saying it happens with way more frequency than you'd think it does. Although 4 years is a lot even for them. It's not necessarily unheard of if you've grown up in the system, though. They tried to do something similar to me while I was in foster care. it wasn't flying, and enough people got involved that it got fixed. But the thing of it is that most of the time nobody gets involved, and that if it's one thing I've learned in my life, it's that there's a lot of bad shit that happens, and a lot of people who don't really do anything about it. And if you're stuck in a situation where you don't really have the world at your back, and people just make a bunch of assumptions, that's how shit goes down. I don't really have faith in the human race, but I can find faith in people, individuals, and I think that's enough. I just don't approach people, even if I do. It's actually not all that common that I do. Although it's probably more on the internet than in person, but it's still like not like I'm just going up to everyone. It's it's more measured than it looks. It's like usually I observe first and then I do. And it's like a stupid defense mechanism where, to an extent, especially whenever dealing with other people of different pagan faiths, I will. It probably comes off as obnoxious to an extent. It's a throwback from whenever I was younger. Did the same thing as like a teenager and shit. It's really not as bad. You would not even begin to imagine. I flat out had to pretend that I was nuts. Yeah, it was one of those not like in a therapist chair or to like anybody official on that, but like I would let like certain classmates think that I was nuts. I would use the same kind of language I might use in my poetry to describe things, but usually it was religiously charged to a certain degree, as just so I would have a basis to think of my feet. And this wasn't something that I came up with because I didn't have to. This is something I came up with because my grandmother was a demented homicidal bitch, and she was involved with other people who did things to people. Whether my grandfather chooses to recognize that he was married to someone like this or not, it doesn't really change the fact that not only was she like this, that she had at some point used me as bait. You can have a horrible, fucked up history and not become it. My mom was actually the one who showed me that. I think some people, they get so stuck up about it, they say, because I can use this as an excuse, because I can get away with this, that's what I'm gonna do. And all the people who stand by and let them do it, they're like, that's just the way that it is. And you know what? It's exactly that sort of thing and those sorts of words that are dangerous. It's exactly that sort of thing that lets that happen. That's what actually empowers them to believe that, because people think if I'm doing something horrible, someone will stop me. Right? Well, nobody stops them. So how are they supposed to conceive that what they're doing is horrible? Some of them know anyway and just don't care. And it gets to the point where even they don't realize how bad they are. But the ones who get the most twisted are actually the ones with the good intentions, right? It's actually the worst part. And anytime I have really good intentions and I want to help, I think about that, as fucked up as it sounds. And then I think about my mom's words, and I use that as a reminder. As a really fucked up reminder that causes a lot of pain, but it's a reminder of a lesson my mom used to say. to never let, I mean, to always help, but always be careful how you do so. Because if your help becomes hurt, it's not really help. You're defeating the purpose. It's basically another version of the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but as a sort of like roadmap of how not to let those good intentions. So like, if you have to hurt somebody to help them, clearly you're not helping them. And that's basically what it is. If you have to hurt somebody to help them or hurt somebody else, if you have to tear apart their lives to help somebody, you're not helping them. Like, these are very clear lines. And they actually make a lot of sense, especially if you go in and study stuff. Have an open mind about it. The thing of it is that a lot of people are raised with this stupid idea that they shouldn't be asking questions. Or that there's only like one right way to even think. And that's not how it works. In fact, the human mind is not so unilateral. It's actually pretty proven that we need to have variance in thoughts from each other. That sometimes the brain just works that way. And it doesn't mean that someone who thinks differently is sick. And we've sort of reached that point where that's all you have to be for someone to label you as sick. And you sort of have to think there needs to be a line. You need to not... There needs to be a line, and there needs to be enforcement of that line. Because there's actually supposed to be at least somewhat of a line of things that they're not supposed to call you crazy for, like they're protected subjects. But the things that people have been called crazy for, have been medicated for, have lost their families over. And it's stupid, and it's horrible. It's just monstrous. The people who do these things are monsters, but many of them don't even see themselves as monsters. Many of them even see themselves as champions. Like they're champions of goodness. Like they're doing something great. They don't see the monster. They don't see themselves. And I think that's the truly scary thing about people. We don't see ourselves. Not in any sort of outward perspective. And in order to see ourselves at all, like I went through years of shit to see myself, really see myself, not just in that self-awareness sort of way, which by the way, whenever I was growing up meant you don't agree with us, so therefore you lack self-awareness. Which, there are things that I was disagreeing with that I still disagree with. Because they were bullshit. They're still bullshit, and I can actually cite books that would agree with me. Because the things that they were saying were normal things. And other people had already said that they were normal, but these were the people my grandmother made sure I got around. She would take me away from the people who were saying that I was normal and fine and that she was bullshitting, and that if she didn't stop, they were going to contact someone because she was trying to make me sick. And she would take me away from that and put me around more people who would basically just invalidate every thought and feeling I ever had because it didn't agree with them. And for them, this was just some twisted experiment, I guess. And no, for some of them it really was. There was actually a lot of med trials in there. And there was a couple who even purposely misdiagnosed me to specifically get me in those med trials. And whenever you get into anything mental, that actually happens a lot. Because they don't scan your brain for this. Even though a lot of different things that you can have, you can scan someone's brain for, as like an added, hey, you know what? This is what it looks like in the cranium. This is what your gray matter looks like, and this is what healthy gray matter looks like, and all this different stuff. They don't completely understand it though, so they don't use it. But I feel like even if it was a subjective piece, it might still be some peace of mind. Especially if, you have schizophrenia or something. Because schizophrenics, legit, their brains actually work different. Like, something physically happens to cause this. Sometimes it's just the chemicals, and you can actually see them though. You can actually measure this stuff. They have machinery to see this, to take video of it, to measure it, and to show you what a normal brain is supposed to do. They have the same thing, but it's not always just the chemicals. Sometimes a schizophrenic's entire brain is physically structured differently. They don't know why, but this is something that has been found. People with PTSD. There's something different that happens in our brain after all the shit that happens. It's why we have flashbacks and the nightmares. It's not something scary and intangible that you cannot measure physically, that you can't investigate physically. It's there, in the brain. But the thing of it is that there are all these people treating it separately. And they're like, oh, you're telling me symptoms, so I'm going to treat these without figuring out if that's even what's really wrong with you. Like, there's absolutely no care to do that. They just... And it's warped to such an extent that there are actually people who, if you checked them, there would be nothing wrong with them. And they're basically just convinced that they're sick at this point. But they're not. And there are so many people who wouldn't even know what to do if you told them that, because they've been told that they've been sick since they were little. Because that's what was convenient. That's what was convenient for the adults. That's what was convenient for some medical trial, for the state, because they didn't want to deal with human emotions. And yes, children have human emotions and developmental milestones, and yes, they respond to these things differently than an adult would, and in some respects similarly, and they don't know how to deal with this, so you end up chalked up on a bunch of medications for shit you don't have. And then my grandmother used all this, and eventually she found someone willing to do it, because here's the sad thing about the human race: it doesn't take much for us to fall. The line is thinner than people think it is. And there are people out there who will use that as an excuse, but it's not one. It's actually the opposite. If you're aware the line is thin, then you should be that much more careful not to cross it. To even avoid going near it whenever possible. But that's not what happens. And that's not an excuse either. It's not one of those, oh, that's just the way things are. No. I'm stating fact. Because if you don't, then how does anybody know what needs changed? For me, it's not, oh, that's the way it is. No, I'm like, straight up, motherfuckers, it needs changed. I will say every curse word in the book. They're not really curse words either. That's historically a Catholic invention, as far as like the way that this is used. Words that were used to actually curse people were like, but then the Catholics, they were like, whenever people become so ignorant because like their cultures and shit have been like robbed from them, they get weird and really superstitious about really stupid things. You actually see this in where Chinese people have lost their culture because the government has like basically outlawed it. So you'll have people like going to the bathroom in public, whenever you remove culture from people, they just sort of do things like the methodology can't talk today. The methodology, the the method of which we think, the methodology. There we go, methodology that we go with, that we think with, basically. It's it's largely dependent on sociological factors. So sociology and psychology are both necessary. They're kind of the same thing, except sociology is everyone and as a whole and as a society and how this affects us and how this affects society as a whole and the way that we're all interconnected and shit. And psychology is the individual. Just purely the individual. And it explores deeper there. So like they're really the same thing except they go in different places. It's kind of like a breakdown of, hey, this is how people think. They're both how people think and how people react and why. But one of them goes towards individual and one of them goes towards society and groups and subcultures and all that different stuff. It's more towards groups of people and the community. So one community, one individual. And both are important. And I feel like if you study one, you should probably study the other. And also that if you're in it, then you should do empathy exercises. What I mean is, if you're going to work with people who have something, find an empathy exercise and do it. Because I know someone who's done this, and she is, it helps her. Like, whenever no matter what intentions you have, it can be really easy to separate yourself from the people that you work with. And this may seem like a great idea at first, but in the long run, it actually hurts you and the people that you work with. And it sort of creates like a partitioned reality, I guess. And you sort of box things up in different boxes in your head. And those people that you work with end up in certain boxes. And you end up elsewhere. And this has a greater impact, especially over time. You completely disassociate from these people as human beings. You come to associate traits that may or may not be part of them, and even project things that they never actually show themselves. May never even be part of them or their behaviors, but you will project it because it's part of what's in that box. That's what happens. And she's done all these empathy exercises, and it actually helps. You kind of have to take them seriously and like want to do them for it to really have much of an impact. And you can't really feel sorry for this person. You have to realize that this person lives like this all the time. And for you, this is horrible, but this person lives like this all the time. It may even be that they cannot actually imagine living otherwise. All you need to do is understand that they go through this, and understand that they are human beings, and not put them away in that box. This is actually something that people go to very easily, because whenever you do work with people, they tell you that you can't, especially in Arizona. I know some places they let you be friends and shit, they just don't want you to date. But like you can, in certain places, I guess, have, like you can't like purposely, like you can't manipulate them basically, but That's basically what it is. It's kind of like a gray area in some places where they let you kind of be friends, sort of, but like don't date, don't have sex, and that stuff with each other because that's an abuse of power because you have like all the power in that relationship. Um, but it's really easy because there's supposed to be boundaries. So instead of setting healthy boundaries and not putting someone in that box, a lot of people will just go straight to putting them in the box. You can't do that. Well, you can, but it's bad. It's part of what allows people to treat people like they aren't people. It's part of what allows soldiers to kill people on the battlefield. Think of them as us and them. One group of people, one group of people. Instead of thinking of everybody as people. There's this box and this box. There's us and them. And the thing of it is that's on a grander scale. But whenever you're actually doing it and you're working with groups of people, the thing of it is that you're grouping them. You can't do that. You have to just look at people as people, keep them out of the box, Keep in mind, listen to them, talk to them like people. And think of the things that they're going through as just things that they're going through. Like things that you go through. It's a lot easier that way not to put them in the box. If you just look at it as their individual shit. Instead of put them in a box. But yeah, the empathy stuff does help. It tends to give perspective. Like, it's easy for someone to look down on someone that they don't understand. Ignorance is a horrible thing. And whenever you remedy that ignorance, it's a lot harder to hate someone when you can relate to them. It's a lot harder to treat someone like they aren't a person. When you have some way in which to have a common ground, an understanding, where there wasn't before, maybe. And this is the thing. My hair is getting so long. It still cannot, eclipse my boobs. Dang. But, it's long enough to get in my armpits and tickle my elbow. Which is not funny and kind of feels weird. So, yeah. Anyway. Whew. I don't know what else to say. Because it's pretty much it. I'm gonna go eat my now cold popcorn. And, turn something on and deal with the fact that I can't sleep. Also, chamomile.